exactly do you do at the moment? Kind of steady at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, so at the minute, basically, I have a job at Pedestrian, which is Administration and Finance Officer. So that's 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Friday. Main days, 8:30 till 4:30, and then Friday, I have to turn up early to let the cleaner in at the workshop, so it's like 7:30 till 3:30. So that's my main bread and butter, and then obviously weekends, I tend to chill out. Thursdays, I can do what I like, so I've been doing a wee bit of doodling, and I've had a small commission just come in from someone that I was in touch with before, who's like the daughter of a friend. So I'm not really planning on taking on many commissions, just because it can entail a lot of work and a lot of stress, and obviously on top of a day job, that's like... Yeah. So basically, I'm like, well, this one's only a small one, so I'll probably do this one and then not really look for any more, and just basically continue to make my own work, more or less.
So are you building like a portfolio then?
Yeah, I mean, I've already got a website with some stuff online, but it's kind of like, so the portfolio is sort of there, so to speak, but it's more just kind of for my own enjoyment, because I wouldn't want to ever, not illustrate stuff, not draw stuff. But basically, just to keep on with it, basically, yeah, and keep adding. So as in, there's a portfolio there, but to keep adding to it, keep updating it. So, it's never a finished thing. You're always kind of like, well, actually, that piece I can do better than that, so I'd like to make something else and maybe switch that out. Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Have you found finding things since university? Like, have you found work easily, or...
Did you come out of uni and kind of fall off the edge, or were you ready? Did you have something lined up?
Well, basically, at uni, I'd started having a part-time job working at Lush. So I quite enjoyed that one. So I basically carried on the part-time job, because that was my plan, was to do the part-time work and build up freelance from there. So that was good in the sense that, I think if I'd have just finished uni and had nothing else to do, then that would have been really difficult. So it was really good to have that going along. And it also, this was in London, because my degree course was in northwest London, Harrow. So a lot of the people that I was working with, there were other illustrators there were actors, there were dancers, there were, all different kinds of people there. So it was quite an arty scene as well. So we'd all kind of be, chatting to each other about what we were doing, that kind of stuff. And because I didn't think, basically I didn't feel as though hadn't really found my style or my way of working by the time I finished uni. I was sort of like, well, actually, I still don't feel as though I'm quite there, because I think my final year project at uni was working in gouache, sort of doing kind of, they were kind of fairly flat and based around shape and based around pattern. But my style that I work in now, that I feel as though is the way that I like working generally, tends to be in pencil with watercolour, although I do some pen work as well. Because I did my mum used to work in a school, well, she used to be a teacher, so I did a talk there, this is a couple of years ago now, about what I do as well.
How old are they?
They were, I think some of them were about 11 and some of them were sort of reception age, so it was a good, because it's only a small school, it's an independent school, so I'm sure that I put them on there so I could show them for that. So I was like, oh yeah, I've got my pictures on my iPad, they've disappeared, I don't know where they've gone, but yeah, as you say, I'll find them later on.
You'll probably walk out of here and be like, I know exactly where they are now.
Yeah.
But we'll find them later on your website anyway.
Awesome, cool, okay.
So, should we get on with have a navigate of these? So, are you saying, so when you left uni and you did that freelance, how long did you do that for? How long did you carry on with Lush and doing the two together?
So Lush, I was there from, say, about 2008 and finished up in 2012.
Oh, right.
Because basically, I decided in 2012, I decided to move back up to Leicester to live, to be closer to family, and also because, London, it's a really exciting place to be, but I was just fed up of the hustle and the bustle and the expense and the noise and all of that kind of stuff. It's so much nicer to be somewhere more peaceful, for me anyway. It's not for everyone.
It has an effect on you though, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, and it's all very, London, it's sort of, from ground to up there, it's all stimulus. You've got signs, you've got lights flashing, you've got people, so you can't sort of just take in your surroundings, if that makes any sense. You feel as though you're constantly being bombarded with stimulus. So it's a lot more, I find it a lot more easygoing to be somewhere not quite so busy, although it was very exciting for a time. Yes, so that was the time I was working at Lush. So,
and did you do freelance for that entire time?
Yeah,
so
that's right.
You got a good feeling of what that was like.
Yes, yeah. So basically, I mean, the freelancing stuff I'm just trying to think when it was, because the main freelancing job that I got in was working for Making Magazine. So that was doing, what are they called? Sort of step-by-step pictures for sewing projects that they were doing. So that was the main thing that came in. Before that, there had been some bits and pieces, but sort of one-off commissions, because it's quite difficult to get started when you first begin, particularly if you finish and sort of, you've got your portfolio ready and you really go at it, that kind of a thing. But for me, I was sort of still muddling my way through it and finding my way of working. So I was quite happy to sort of because I had the income from the other job.
Try everything.
Yeah, kind of a thing, and sort of feel as though I'd set myself up with things properly, and yeah, had sort of explored some avenues basically. I'm just trying to think, because it's difficult to remember everything in sequential order. It's easier if I pulled up the pictures and could show you.
We'll get home and listen to this back and we'll know what we're talking about, because
we'll have it.
We'll have a look. Okay, so because we want to know kind of, how would you describe that kind of industry? Would you say it's really difficult, or would you say it's cutthroat, or would you say...
I wouldn't describe it as cutthroat exactly, but I think the main difficulty with it is that basically you can't guarantee your income. And this was a big reason, why I decided to actually, get a job that, you have a salary paid in each month. Is that, for example, if you're, because you get to a certain age and you start to think more seriously about your future, and say, for example, if you're getting a mortgage, something like that, further down the line, if you're only on freelance stuff, then you have to prove 3 years worth of income above a certain amount for them to be, to be able to see that you're actually earning enough. So that's the main issue actually, is that you don't know from 1 month to the next what you're going to be getting in. So you're more or less sort of well... Does
that make you nervous? Did it make you nervous?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I think it would make just about anyone nervous. And also, of course, it's a lot of work involved. You're not just making your own pictures. You're supposed to be marketing. You're supposed to be the accountant and all of that stuff. Because that was something that, we pulled up our uni for a little bit, was that, what, you could have taught us that stuff, been with us on that stuff a lot more thoroughly.
Interesting, yeah.
About how to actually manage your business properly, because that's what it is. It's a small solo business, basically. So knowing how to do your accounts and, how to submit your tax return, all that kind of stuff. It's actually, because I still have to do a tax return now for some reason. I think they've still not got me fully off of freelance stuff, even though I've told them that I've more or less finished with that. But yes, so it's actually, tax returns aren't so bad, but they're not so bad if you've got the records there, if you know what your income is, what your expenditure is, and all that stuff. And of course, there's all the things you don't think about as well. So for example, you can put in stuff about charitable places that you donate to, all that kind of stuff. If you're a member of the National Trust, the Royal Academy, things like the Association of Illustrators membership as well.
Are you part of that?
I am, yes. Association of Illustrators, that's the one, yeah.
Because we have a
joint university
with the university, but it's curious to find out if people after uni still use it, whether it's that useful.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the Association of Illustrators one, I think it's £150 a year, and that's with their publication as well. So that could be quite interesting. Although, I mean, it's interesting because it's kind of their publication tends to be a particular kind of illustration, if that makes sense. The quite highbrow kind, if that makes any sense. So it depends really if that speaks to you or not. Sometimes I find it a little bit over-intellectualized for the work that I'm sort of seeing, because my main kind of base of contact for sort of seeing what's going on and what my peers are up to is probably Twitter, Facebook, things like that. Sort of go oh, that's cool, look what they're doing, kind of a thing. So that's kind of, I mean, a lot of their people, I think, that they sort of have on are kind of Royal College graduates. It's that kind of stuff. So it's a different sort of pools that people are operating in. So it kind of depends whether that speaks to you or not. But I still quite like getting it and having a leaf through. But it's good if you're, because they do advice about pricing, basically. So free price inquiries. So obviously if you were actually do you know what, I want to, I'm going to be going at it full force and marketing and, looking for stuff and, all that stuff, then it's really useful to have that there because it's on tap and, you pay your fee and you don't have to pay them anything extra on top. So you can actually then...
So they are a level of support, really, aren't they?
Yes, that's right, yeah. So particularly when you're first starting out, because yeah, it's very nerve-wracking when you first begin, kind of going like, how do I price my work? And because you don't want to.
I wouldn't know where to start. To be fair,
yeah.
so that's a good stepping off point.
Yeah, I mean, if ever in doubt, you can always revert to an hourly rate,
Yeah.
But then, of course, it's you can put together different packages, depending. But a big thing is people wanting your copyright, of course. And it's kind of like, well, you could in theory have it, but you're going to have to pay for it. And that's going to be a lot. And people can be quite surprised because normally it's licenses, a license to use your work for a certain period of time and on certain things. So you'll get people being cheeky, sort of saying, well, can we use it on a poster on our website and all of these things? It's sort of like, well, if you want to use it on all of those channels, you're going to have to pay extra for it. Basically, because that's how you make money as an illustrator, more or less.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but that's quite tricky because even with the support from the AOI, putting together a price plan that isn't going to be leaving you out of pocket. There's no guarantee that someone won't be willing to do it cheaper. That they will go with what you've put forward. So that's another issue as well, and that's. I think something that's kind of consistent throughout the industry, unfortunately, is basically people being undercut. That kind of race to a bottom mentality. I mean, obviously there are still, professional illustrators doing it, so it can't be that bad all over, but it is fairly prevalent, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, so sorry to be a downer, but because
You're
basically...
more positive than our lecturers.
Do you ever turn down things if someone wants it for free?
Yeah, what's your kind of stance on free work?
If they're a charity and they're not going to be making profit off of it, then it's fine. But if they're making money off of it, then why can they not get? Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Okay. And you also have this sort of business of, I'm just trying to think of an instance in particular where sort of almost someone, there might not be money involved, but they're kind of wanting to do, some people they want to do a project to kind of enhance their own standing or their own reputation. So then they're expecting to kind of rope people in to do this stuff for free. Like there was one guy who basically, he actually wasn't going to be doing anything except organising the people to do the stuff. Like he wasn't going to be because it was for a magazine, I think, and he wasn't going to be graphic designing it, he wasn't going to be putting up the money, he wasn't going to be illustrating, he wasn't going to be writing, he wanted to kind of get all these people on board for free to put together his project. And you're sort of like, no. Why, what's your role in this? What are you bringing to the table, And sort of he put up a, what's it called, Kickstarter fund and all of this kind of business, and you're just sort of like, I don't really see why anyone would do this, and sure enough it didn't fly. You've got to, if you're asking other people to chip in, then you have to chip in something yourself, obviously, as well.
Being,
you can't,
you can't, no.
Do you want to refer to this?
Yeah.
This was just in case.
How
would you say you stay attractive to the industry? Do you watch these styles that are coming in and out and try and respond to those, or do you just stick to your own?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tricky one, isn't it? Because, obviously you want to be flexible with things, and it's good sometimes to take a bit of influence and sort of go, oh, that's cool. Yeah. But I'd say that, and because things have changed as well, because... communication happens so quickly now that things change really quickly now. Absolutely, yeah. So, in actual fact, you see people sort of, like jumping on these almost meme-ish kind of little bandwagons. Like there was the thing with, bears in jumpers, and there was the thing with, what else? Cats and pugs and
sloths,
unicorns.
Foxes,
all that stuff, and owls, which is a shame because I love owls.
Ruined owls,
yeah, and like those are genuinely.
I've got an owl necklace that I just can't wear anymore. It was totally overdone.
These are all obviously trends that come in and then they go out as soon as they come in.
Exactly, and that's the downside with trend. You want to obviously keep up with things, but you don't want to be trendy because trends go in and they go out.
Yeah.
So
and if you're then associated with that trend, you're going to struggle to get back in.
Not struggle to get back in, but I don't know, this could just be a personal thing, but when I see someone who's there's no substance to their work, as in you sort of think, oh, I get that's what your personality is almost, or that's what your interest is. If you can just see that they're basically just going, oh, bears and jumpers are selling, I'm going to do a bear in a jumper, and you sort of see that going on where they're basically just doing that thing. For me, I kind of take them a bit less seriously, to be honest. Take their work, not in a horrible way, but sort of just kind of like, I'm not as interested in you.
You question their imagination, don't you?
Yeah.
If they can only stick to what is current, they're never moving forward, are they?
Yeah. I mean, it's very, very difficult because, of course, it's easy to kind of say, oh, well, because in actual fact, as an illustrator, the kind of thing that you can put forward that would be most amazing is kind of this, a vision that no one's seen before, and kind of go, wow, that's amazing, but of course, that's easy for someone to sit and say that, but then when you're there making it and you're putting all the time into it, and then you're not even sure anyone's going to like it, and then you're like, what if I do all this and it's for nothing? So you can sort of see why the trend thing happens, because of course if you're making something, you almost want a guarantee that someone's going to buy it, so if you do stuff and people don't, but that's
So where do you stand on taking risks with that kind of thing?
I don't know. I would say it's good to kind of, because for me, a lot of what it was about, because basically I feel as though with those, a lot of people like them, but also that's kind of the core of what I'm about and what I like. I'm interested in nature, I'm interested in birds and in plants. Like with a lot of my work, for example, I don't just kind of go, oh, I love a bird and some flowers. Like with those ones, they came from somewhere. So for example, like the green finch is with fritillaries and with primroses. In those cases, it was kind of more to do with colour combinations. So as in yellow and green and pink and blue all look lovely together. But then later on, it can be things like, I did a piece which was waxwings with rose hips, basically because that's one of waxwings' favourite foods, basically. And it was to do with the seasons as well. I like kind of the idea of making things kind of in tune with the seasons. So that one, it was kind of an autumnal or kind of winter piece. So obviously you've got the rose hips that are out towards the end of autumn, and the waxwings migrate over. I think they migrate over, I'm pretty sure they migrate to the bird. But yeah, so that's basically, they'll come over to eat those more or less. So it kind of tells a story, if that makes any sense. So it's kind of like something that I think, it would be pleasing for other people to look at, but it also speaks to the core of what I'm interested in and what I kind of value. And yeah, exactly, yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think it's kind of that balancing act between being brave enough, I suppose, to kind of speak your truths and to kind of say about, this is what's important to me. I mean, there's that whole thing of draw what you know, which I think is a little bit reductionist, because if you just drew what you knew, then you'd get bored quite quickly. But sort of, things that kind of speak to you. And it's because I suppose when you're making a picture about something, you're almost saying, this is important and I want you to see it, This is something that I have that I think is valuable, not my work, but this picture, this thing that I'm painting, it's valuable. So it's almost like you're putting that out into the world, if that makes any sense. I'm not sure if I'm making sense.
No, that's really interesting. Have you had any issues or experiences with copyright and other people taking or using your work?
Not personally, but it's happened a lot to other people that I know. Particularly, I think mainly because I'm not really popular or trendy enough. Like, not to say I like my work, but say like Gemma Carell, is it Carell or no? I think it's Carell, because she gets really annoyed about it being the wrong one. You don't know if you've seen her stuff, but it's fairly, you probably know it if you saw it. It's the Pugs Not Drugs stuff and all that kind of cartoon, that kind of stuff. She's had her work pinched a lot, basically because. Yeah, absolutely, because people like it. It's easy to reproduce, so the sellers in China have had our work a lot. But it's not really happened to me that much. But certainly issues, like there was when I just finished uni, someone at my degree show spotted my work and said, oh, would you like to, they were kind of like I think they were like a graphic design company who were then liaising with the NHS to make some kind of leaflet about healthy eating. So there would be me making the work, this company putting it together, the graphic design company, and then the NHS, who were the actual client. So that was kind of like, oh, this is exciting. But basically that one, it didn't go through. It turned out to be a bit of a dead end, because basically, first off, they were not wanting to be definite about how many pictures they want. So initially they were sort of saying 50 to 60 spot illustrations. So as in, a single image on a floating on a clear or kind of transparent background that you can just plonk wherever you want, sort of round text or whatever. Which, you sort of think for a leaflet, that's an awful lot. It's an awful lot. And then, there was the
papering with it.
yeah, exactly, yeah. So then, of course, I was sort of like, well, but then what's the deadline for this? And then it was like, oh, about, like 2.5 months or something. And I was like, what? But then, of course, the minute I started pricing it up, then the numbers started dropping down. That's why I'd say if you're negotiating with someone, talk about price as quickly as possible, because absolutely, because yeah, people can be very, very ambitious with what they want until they realise they've got to pay for it. And, you know, I think sometimes people think it's going to be like clip art, and it's like, it's not like clip art. You're asking me to make for you a bespoke picture.
Each of those drawings that you see probably had 10 or 20 drawings that led to it. That's what annoys me.
They don't think about the time
just do me a drawing, and it's like, well, yeah, but
it's not the first image that we're going to
first
give you.
one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously you do rough stages beforehand, which I think is also quite good because it gives them an insight, gives them a bit of input as to what's happening, but also they sort of see that it's not just there, it's a picture. But yeah, and then with that one, so there was that issue, but then there was the issue around copyright where they basically wanted the copyright, and I was like, well, I basically said you'd have to pay X amount for the copyright because you're basically asking to use that work in perpetuity on anything, and I would have no control over what you do with it. So, you know, you'd have to pay an awful lot, but as a cheaper option, how about this proposal, which is, you know, a license to use it on these things, and that was helped with the AOI helping me to price that up, basically. So I sent them across, and sort of you don't have to send them one thing, so I sort of sent them across 3 options, I'd say. You probably wouldn't want any more than 5 options, but I think I gave them sort of 3 options, various tiers as to, you know, there's this package, and this package. And I think it basically just died from there because they were like, whoa, this is a lot of money. It's like, yeah, well, it's a lot of work, you know?
So you didn't do anything for them in the end?
No. I did start on some of the pictures, which were kind of like for my own portfolio or something. I did quite a pleasing apple, I remember. It looked quite nice. I think I've still got that somewhere.
Pleased with that apple.
Yeah, I was pleased with that apple. It was a nice looking apple. But yeah, so that was a pity.
Yeah.
But, you know, ultimately, you know, it's one of those things where there's no point sort of thinking like, oh, I could have done that, you know, because what would have been the point if, you know, I'd then not got paid fairly for it and all the rest of it. You know, you sort of think, well, it's better to just find out at the beginning. You've put sort of, you've not invested as much into it, and you can move on to looking for something else that is worth your while. Mm-hmm.
So your freelance work, I had a question then.
We'll go on to something else.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
What was the most memorable project that you've ever done?
One that you really you were either proud of or was so exciting?
Got really stuck into?
I think probably the proudest one would have been the last exhibition I did. Well, not the last one, but the kind of most recent one, I think it would have been, which is in 2012, which is a long time ago now, so it's a good thing I'm doing another one. So that one was an exhibition which was, again, organised between me and my uni friends at Coningsby Gallery in London. And I think the main reason for that one being exciting was that I did 3 new pieces of work, which was a nightjar, a cuckoo, and some swallows. And I think for that one, it was basically because I was pushing my work. So the compositions were more complex, the mark making and the shading were more complex. So it was basically kind of like, you know, I stood back from those pieces and I was like, I feel as though I've developed from this.
Yeah.
So that was really good. So I was really pleased about that. Another one that was pretty memorable was one that was it was a travel agent called Cox and Kings who got in touch with some of us and said, we will pay you to make a piece of work based around India, because that was a package they were selling. So the name of the project was Inspiring India. And these pieces will be exhibited at the Royal Geographical Society. There'll be like a proper little exhibition night there. And then also to do a couple of blog posts like about your work on the project, more or less. So that was pretty cool. It was like, having your work exhibited at the Royal Geographical Society, that's pretty neat. So that was nice, and I enjoyed that piece of work as well. It was something a little bit different. So yeah, he's up on my website as well, my peacock.
Yeah. Is your exhibition up on the website as well?
Yes, the 2012 one.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. I can't wait to have it. So can you tell us at the moment what kind of illustrations are you doing? Are you sticking with your watercolours? That's what you're doing at the moment?
Eventually, but basically there's been quite a lot of upheaval in the sense that I've moved home, changed jobs, all that's been going on. So at the minute my workroom is now set up, but because I was thinking about this in actual fact, because obviously I'm working a full-time job now, I've got this wee little commission that's come in, I've got other bits and bobs going on. So I was thinking about this show that I'm supposed to be doing in the summer and thinking, oh God, if I've got to start doing stuff like that where I've got to, wet the paper and stretch it and do all this, and I was sort of like, I don't want to sort of, you want to obviously still be making work, but you don't want to make it such a massive chore for yourself. Not at the minute anyway, when there's already been quite a lot of stuff.
Doesn't it?
It can do, yeah. Like, absolutely it can. You know, you sort of think you want to be enjoying it. Yeah. So I think my plan for this exhibition this summer might even be that I just do some drawings. I could even just do them in a sketchbook and sort of take the pages out. You know, you sort of think, well, if you just want to be making stuff, then just make stuff, you know. You don't have to be sort of fretting so much about a finished piece, you know. I mean, maybe if I was still looking for commissioned works, then I might be. Yeah. But seeing as I'm kind of like, well, you know, I'm earning money in a different fashion now, so I don't have to worry so much about what other people think. So, you know, as long as it sort of looks neat and presentable and, you know, looks good. Because I've been doing some doodling in my sketchbook, which is slightly different. I've been drawing dinosaurs. Basically, for me and because I still keep in touch with my friends from uni, I think pretty much for all of us, you know, none of us have gone down the straight illustration path, as in...
I don't think that exists.
I don't know.
Until you have experience, I don't think that can exist.
No.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, I know one or two...
Too varied.
Because I would say, I mean, for me, kind of the straight illustration path would be, or sort of the kind of, I don't know how to phrase it best, but sort of, I suppose, what people think of when they think of illustration would be print, basically, so editorial, book publishing, magazines, that kind of stuff, which I suppose, because a lot of, you know, it's kind of interesting because obviously a lot of that has moved on to digital, so there's some brave new frontiers there in terms of moving pictures, which apparently could well be a big thing, so as in having little looped images, that kind of a thing that can go on
like
GIFs, exactly, on websites, things like that. But basically, you know, the publishing industry, as we know, like the music industry, has taken an absolute pounding in the last few years. So I think that's where a lot of the kind of present woes for a lot of illustrators come from. So I don't think any of us have done that. I know one or two people who are sort of doing children's book stuff. But for me and my friends, we have kind of sort of moved into different areas. So for example, one of them... Well, actually, two of them are sort of doing set stuff. Like, one guy is in Cardiff, working on set design stuff over there for plays and things like that. But then also for, there's the Doctor Who experience there. So we worked on some of the sets for that. Then a friend in London who she freelances at different kind of design agencies, but she's worked in making things to go in shop windows. Like for Mulberry, things like that. They had some things with like big toadstools, but they also did all kinds of things, like doing the books that went on, you know, sorry, I'm not explaining things very well at all, the London Olympics, where they had like the bit with the beds in to celebrate the NHS with the kids with the books, so she was making these books for weeks on end, just books and books. So that's what she does. So they're kind of the more set and prop kind of side of things. So that's one area you can explore, but I think you'd probably, for that, you'd obviously have to move to where the work is.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yeah, sure.
You mentioned how at university you wish they'd taught you about building your own business. Is there anything else that you didn't learn that you wish you knew then?
That we can go into uni and be like teachers.
Teachers, yeah, absolutely. Well, in actual fact, I mean, I was a little bit jealous when you were talking about your graphic design module, because that was something, for some reason, we really struggled to actually, I think because we had a theory tutor who was a graphic designer, a lady called Emma Cowley, fabulously intelligent. But basically, I think a lot of the other tutors there had come from different practices. So we actually wanted to kind of learn about, not to be kind of like given a straitjacket of restricted rules of how to do things, but we were trying to sort of, you know, lay out our illustrations with text, trying to put together, you know, pamphlets and things like that, you know, and sort of wanting to know how to make the designs effective and attractive. And of course, you can't break rules unless you know what they are in the first place. So that was something we were kind of really kind of banging our heads against the wall with, was sort of like, well, you know, can't you tell us about some of this stuff?
It is fantastic. We are mixed with animation and graphic design.
So it's good
every
to
week
network with these kind of
so
people,
we
so
have
they can teach you
feelers
those
everywhere.
things.
If we wanted to do an illustration that went into animation, we have that option.
No, that's really good.
There.
So
So you wish you'd known those things. So do you think you probably would have wanted to do, say, a graphic design module?
I'm not sure about a whole module necessarily,
just like the bits like layout and things like that. Because that's what I went over to do. Like, I wanted to learn about layout and typography and things like that. And there is a lot that you don't know. You don't realise how much how much time they actually put into setting out a page. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would have been good to have a grounding in kind of core principles.
Yes.
But we did sort of end up getting that in the end because basically Sheena stepped in and helped out. But it took us a lot of effort to kind of get, because they were sort of like, I think it was almost like a kind of a postmodern kind of problem in the sense that they were kind of like, well, you don't need to know the rules because the rules don't exist. It's like, yeah, but the rules do still very much exist. You can't start making things with no bleed on them. And
mark our work. That's my question. And
yeah.
They're like, think outside the box. And I'm like, yeah, I would, but I know for a fact that you want to mark certain things. So I need to touch certain things.
Yeah, I have to admit, that is something that I found quite frustrating about arts education in general, is that obviously you're supposed to be all free and doing stuff and
and then you have to get marked on it somehow.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And this whole business of sort of making, it's supposed to be, your sketchbook, which is supposed to help you make the work, but then it's actually not for that at all. It's for them to mark your work. Yeah, I suppose that's the thing, is sort of there's the honesty aspect of it, but I suppose ultimately that's kind of bordering more into the fine art, I suppose, area of things, a kind of personal expression, but ultimately with illustration, of course, in theory, it's got to be something you can market. It has to have a commercial aspect to it, so yeah.
But then there's also people on our course that will, if you ever mention the word commercial,
they'll go nuts.
They go mental.
So much divide in that, but you should do fine art though if you want to.
I think the word illustration means different things to different people. I think that's what it comes down to. Some people, illustration is drawing. So there are some people on our course that will not touch a computer, and our lecturers have to be like, yeah, but when you get out into the real world, you're going to need to, because that is just how it is. And it's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is definitely, and it does have a bit of a crisis of identity, really, in the sense that, a lot of the time, illustration kind of gets married up to graphic design, because those things coexist, because basically illustration has its history in printed publications, so those two kind of seem to be natural bedfellows. But actually, a lot of what illustration grew out of was representational art, in the sense of, I'm trying to remember stuff from years ago, because this is part of what my dissertation was about. So basically, art involving the figure, before there was that kind of divide and move into abstract art, because basically, I forget what the time period was. I think it was the 50s, somewhere around about the 50s. Basically, it was like, pictures that is of stuff that actually exists, that's out. It's all abstract stuff. So at that point, that kind of work became the preserve of kind of this, what Clement Greenberg, who was kind of the main proponent of this new abstract style, would call, what did he call it? Ersatz art, basically. And so that's why illustration has also struggled with this kind of whole thing of it's commercial and all that kind of business, because it was always viewed that way. It's always basically been, by people like Clement Greenberg, used as the kind of the poor relation of the fine arts, more or less. But it's not, it's just a different thing, basically, altogether.
Something that fine artists would call sellouts.
Yeah, exactly. But for me, my own take on that, my inspiration to do illustration was Beatrix Potter, because I thought, how lovely, and these are things that, it's not...
I can see that, now you said that.
It's also the battle between the pretty and the making a statement type thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But for me, it's kind of like, you've got the artwork in galleries, and obviously that side of things is really good. I like going to galleries and I like seeing that kind of challenging intellectual work, but then there's also the joy of these things that kind of, come into your home, there's the books that you have and things like that, where you're sort of like, it's sort of speaking to you on an everyday kind of a level.
Yeah, you want to connect with the story, don't
Mm-hmm.
I love Tenniel for that.
Oh yes, of course. Mm-hmm.
Alice in Wonderland and all of that. Beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was a very fine illustrator, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think I am a bit different. I do like interesting things as well as just the pretty.
You have to be versatile though. Yeah. That's what we're learning. And they've drummed that into us from the beginning. You've got to be versatile. Don't just stick to one thing, do everything, and then you'll know what you want.
Yeah, I think it helps in general, just in general in life, to have a degree of flexibility. Obviously, again, staying true to that kind of core of your values and beliefs, because I think something that you find when you get out into the real world is that you have certain things, tested, if that makes any sense, and you do discover that there are certain things that you would be asked to do or to sacrifice, for example, that you just couldn't because it would be too taxing on you, if that makes any sense. I don't know quite how to explain it. But yeah, it's always a good idea to have a degree of flexibility about you, basically.
I think that makes you more attractive too.
Something Tom was saying was like you need to almost have two different styles, something that you want to sell and something that's very personal to you. That's what he was saying, wasn't it?
Yeah, that could be one way of...
to you or...
It could be one way of dealing with things, yeah. I mean, I think one way that I found of speaking about this kind of thing was almost to view your work as almost being like a language, or being like so for example, like you have your voice and your way of speaking, but say when you pick up the telephone and you're talking, like if you went to a job interview, you would speak differently, and you do that without realizing it, so it's the same principle for your artwork. This is your voice, and your voice is always, you, and they should be able to look at it and say, that's Amelia's work, But again, you can sort of change the tone, I suppose. So it's like a tone of voice kind of thing.
So it's about keeping your personality in the work.
Yeah, I would say so, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that you're passionate about that, actually.
Yeah, because that was one thing I did feel about Tom, that he was like, do what they ask. And I do agree with that to a certain extent, but I also believe that you'll end up hating the job, I think.
I think as long as you're passionate and you're happy with what you're doing.
And I kind of think also, it's that kind of business where if you're sort of putting, you're speaking, if that makes any sense, and people like what you're saying, then they will come to you, that's kind of, and whereas because, you do see sort of portfolios of people where they are just doing what they say and actually maybe aren't doing it so well, I would say, not in a horrible way, but just kind of...
too many pots.
Yeah, that kind of a thing, kind of, you need to develop it. It's rare to come across someone that can really... turn their hand to lots of different styles and lots of different ways of working effectively.
That's made me feel much better.
Yeah. It's different approaches.
Yeah.
But, if I had someone sort of approach me and say, I want, like a really technical looking drawing of a train or a car or something like that, I'd just sort of be like, look, there's other people who are going to do a much, go just ask them, kind of thing. You sort of think, well, that's not what I'm doing, not in a, you can't obviously be too picky about things, but you do have to be realistic about what you're going to enjoy doing, but also what you feel that you can do well.
Because you don't want to get halfway through the project and get so stressed because you just know you can't achieve it.
Yeah.
And then you've wasted their time and yours.
Yeah, and you do want to be making stuff that you feel, you're proud of. And also, you're sort of like, well, what if you did do it and did a really good job of it? And then people are like, Emma does amazing pictures of cars. And you're like, oh my God, the cars! No more cars! So there's that. Or even, something that you're not really capable of doing. Like if someone said, I want, a really dark, disturbing, gory picture. And, you just sort of be like, can't do it,
it's not birds.
Yeah.
You want to come to me for birds, that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of like I wouldn't even know how to approach this really,
Am I run out of questions? Are you happy?
We're happy with that.
Thank you so much.
That's all right, no problem at all.